So we've looked at that. This is more likely how you've seen it, the three bubbles, and the student, the curriculum, and the teacher. We've looked at these items. You can see there are bullets under those bubbles, and put the learning task in the middle, because it is indeed the learning task that predicts performance. If we give our students low-level tasks to do in our classroom, they're not going to be able to engage themselves at a higher level on any kind of assessment, whether we're giving it or the state is giving it. So we decided, all right, what is it that we want our students to be doing, our teachers to be doing, as a result of the curriculum changing. As you know, the curriculum is changing drastically with those Common Core standards. So we look at the student first. We're asking the students to do two things: set personalized learning goals and utilize the power of peers. We did a lot of research over the past 6 to 8 months doing our work to see what are those things, what are those strategies that are going to change the achievement of our students. Two items that had effect size greater than 1 were setting goals and feedback. And so you'll see that in here. So setting personalized learning goals. Our students do need to do that based on what the teacher is setting. The teacher has to set the learning criteria out and communicate that criteria, both what they need to learn and how it will be measured. So the student needs to set those goals. They need to monitor, assess, set new goals, a cycle of work. In terms of utilizing the power of peers, I can't say this enough. Again, this is collaboration. We need to model that as teachers and as administrators, and that's the way work gets done. So students do need to collaborate, cooperate, and communicate. This is very key for their success in the future, not just in school. Teacher, we have 3 bullets. Know your student, articulate learning targets, provide feedback. So knowing your student, we've said this again and again, if a student does not believe that their child cares about them, about him or her, they're not going to be able to learn, and that is absolutely key. So not only must we know about our students' learning preferences, we need to know them as a person. They need to believe that we care about them. Articulating learning targets, I talked about that a little bit when we talked about the student. The teachers need to be very clear what are those learning targets and how is the level of successful achievement of those targets. Providing feedback and continuous opportunities to learn. An example would be teaching reading in the 1st grade or kindergarten. You know that the teachers will never give up. They never say, all right, we finished the letter M, so we're not going back to that. If this child doesn't have the sound letter connection for the letter M, that child is going to get it again and again and again until they get it. So they have continuous opportunities to learn. We do that less often as our children get older. Sometimes we will go through the world history curriculum, and well, we've already done Greece, so now we're moving on to Rome. And so we don't revisit. And our students do need continuous opportunities to learn and opportunities to demonstrate that learning. That's very, very difficult, but that's our job. In other words, if they haven't learned it, we haven't taught it. Knowing your students, so there are certainly their learning styles, etc., but also their hopes and dreams. Who is this child walking in the door? What happened last night? Did they have a good basketball game the night before? Did something happen to their cat? We need to know our students and need to be part of their lives, and they're going to open up and they're going to learn for us. Articulating learning targets, again, I just said that. Determine the targets and the success criteria and communicate both as well. Opportunities for feedback, again, you can see we have to use that cycle, give feedback that is specific, timely, and corrective. Great job is not specific, timely, or corrective. It's, I really like the way you had the straight line on the letter R there. Or you were very clear here when you described this. These were good describing words, and articulate those words. So you have to be very specific. Feedback has got to be timely. So it's either right then in the classroom or the next day, but to return work or to give that feedback much later does not have that. And it has to be corrective. That's what we need. We want to see how can I make this better, and then we have to provide students with the opportunities to make it better and to demonstrate that they have now learned based on that corrective feedback. Curriculum, depth versus breadth, and complex and relevant. That's obviously where we need to go with our curriculum. The Common Core Standards pushes us there. Complex is a word you will see again and again in the Common Core Standards. So certainly we want fewer concepts, but we want deep understanding of those concepts and the processes for dealing with them. So we're looking at very deep transferable knowledge and skills. That's what we want our students to have. We can't teach everything in the world. It just can't happen. We don't have enough time and knowledge ourselves to do that. So we really want to have them have very core understandings of skills and knowledge that they can transfer to other subject areas. Complex and relevant is a high level of cognitive demand. That's a question that we ask all the time. What was the level of cognitive demand of that task that you're giving students? Really, how much was the brain working when you had to do this? Were we just coloring in, or were we truly thinking about what we had to do and how we were going to make connections when we were creating that poster? The learning task, again, the task predicts performance. It has to have higher order thinking, inquiry, authentic application. You all know higher order thinking. We use two frameworks right now. The one that you're seeing there is Bloom's taxonomy. We also have Webb's depth of knowledge, which we have used and has become more popular. But that's, we need to make sure our tasks push us to that higher order thinking. Even in kindergarten, we can move the students to higher order thinking. Inquiry, so we have discovery, constructing learning. That's so exciting. It's difficult. Our job is so difficult as teachers to create tasks that will push students to learn and to create on their own. And authentic, real world problems. Real world authentic application is multidisciplinary by nature. These tasks, you can't, in the real world, anything that any of us do in our jobs is not one-dimensional. It does not just have one subject area, just mathematics or just history or technology. They're all completely integrated, and so by nature they are multidisciplinary. Again, very tough on our part as teachers to create these tasks for students, but this is something we can do by collaboration, working as teams. So that's Vernon's strategy for improvement. And let's see how much more I have here. We have created a rubric. It's still in draft form for each of those 10 bullets, so that teachers can give each other feedback. They can do self-assessments for feedback. Eventually administrators may give feedback as well. The coaches can. But these are the things we need to be seeing in all of our classes. Before we change any of these bullets, it will be 3 to 5 years. That's how long it will take to truly get all of these things in every single one of our classes. We're working, obviously, for a brighter future here. It's time for us to move forward. I believe that we can. We can do this. It's very exciting, and we're looking forward to this. It's back to our tower here. So, Town of Vernon, proud of our schools, and we've been saying that for a while. So this was the presentation that we provided to our teachers a week ago last Friday. And thank you, Peter. And so you can turn the light on, Peter, thank you. That was and you have one, you should have one in your packet. The front side is the instructional core. The back side is a little bit more of an explanation of each of the bullets, a little bit of text there to explain that. But it's these are our next steps, so we're very, very excited about this.
Thank you. Is there questions of Dr. Conway on the presentation? No questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're at item 5.6, and that is Director, 2012-2013 Universal Screening Data Presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hill. And I think we have Mr. Osmond, Mrs. Morasso, and Mr. Gussie, who are going to share information overview on the areas here. We have both mathematics and literacy. But I'd like to bring to your attention right at the forefront, when you look at just the first 4 pages, if you didn't notice, those are the only 2 that we included this year's and last year's data. So the first page is this year's letter sound fluency, and then last year's. Now we started a little higher this year, but we certainly have climbed much higher in the middle of the year in terms of letter sound fluency, and that is our key indicator of reading readiness, is to make sure you can make those connections. And then phoneme segmentation fluency, you can see there that this year, again, at the middle of the year, because we don't do a fall screening for that, but at the middle we are farther ahead than next year. And I am asking Mr. Gussie and our kindergarten teachers and Mr. Lemoy to prepare a presentation for you about the iPads that we have in 2 of our kindergarten classes, to truly pull that data out and see if in those particular classes, if we see anything even after half a year. So very excited to look at that data, but I will turn this over to Mrs. Morasso.
Thank you, Dr. Conway. You saw in the PowerPoint the identification of the curriculum leadership team. That is the team in the Vernon schools that's charged with leading the development, the implementation, the monitoring, and the evaluation of a comprehensive standard-based curriculum for all students. One of the strategies of the curriculum leadership team is the development of the Vernon Public Schools Assessment Blueprint. The assessment blueprint is populated with 2 types of data. The first is universal screening data. Universal screening data supports this district's implementation of scientific research-based interventions. These are quick, easy-to-use screens that provide us with an identification of a level of risk of students in specific areas, both academically and behaviorally. The other assessment item that's populated on the blueprint are the performance tasks and benchmarks that we're now developing to align with the implementation and the development of our Common Core state standards. So what you have in your packet this evening are some of the universal screening data from the winter screens in both reading and mathematics. And Chris Osmond and Justin Gussie will provide you some of the highlights of that data that's in your packet.
As Dr. Conway mentioned, you have both last year's and this year's data for the 2 kindergarten screens that we use, both the phoneme segmentation and letter sound fluency. I wanted to include last year's because it's reflective of the past several years. And I wanted to show the significant change from the past several years to this year. The better data this year, the better scores that our students have achieved, I think is attributable to a number of different factors. One of them being we have a district-wide kindergarten-specific literacy coach this year who's made efforts to implement a writer's workshop in kindergarten. That's something that we haven't had in the past. When students are encoding language, that's a much more complex task than decoding or reading. In other words, this writing is new to them. It's causing them to not only be better communicators, but also better readers, better able to understand different components that make up a word, that make up a sentence. As you're well aware, we have a significant number of students who are now involved in extended day K that were not last year. So thank you for that. It's paying dividends, I believe. Also, towards the end of last year, we had leveled literacy intervention, which is a Heinemann product, it's a program. But students that have been involved with that have made significant growth. That's new this year. We've had a teacher loop at Northeast School from a pre-K to a kindergarten classroom. There's a large research base to show that looping, particularly in the elementary level, is very beneficial for our students, if the teacher is a good teacher, obviously. You know the kids coming in at the beginning of the year, the students, you know their needs. The students know you as the teacher, they understand how you run your classroom, what the procedures are.